Thanks, Mike. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that we've gone through to develop our wet weather plan from the legal perspective, the regulatory perspective. Our existence, our mission, our goal in life is rooted in the Pennsylvania Clean Streams Law requirements of that act was adopted in 1937, I believe, and the Clean Water Act of 1972. The focus of those laws was to create treatment. As Dave and Mike have spoken about, up until 1959, when we began operation, the sewage from all of the communities in Allegheny County discharged directly to the rivers and streams in our area. There was no treatment. The Clean Water Act, I believe, was a crowning success in improving the quality of our rivers and making them usable, not just more attractive, but usable for drinking water, for industry, for recreation. It's with the accomplishments of those acts and the efforts of everybody involved in that, Alcosan, the industries that have come under regulation and reduced their pollution, that's allowed us to see what the impact is of these remaining overflows that occur during wet weather. So in 1987, we see amendments to the Clean Water Act. In 1989, we see regulations implementing those amendments. And in 1994, we see a policy to guide EPA in implementing those changes that focus not so much on treatment anymore, because that's been accomplished, but focus on the discharges to the rivers and the maintenance of the systems that discharge to the rivers. So beginning in the early 90s, Alcosan began an unprecedented level of study to characterize its system and understand how it reacts to wet weather, how the impact of those discharges affects our waterways, what our capacities are. It was during the time that we were generating this information that our conversation with EPA began to further their policy. I don't know if anybody's had conversations with a government agency, but it usually starts with a letter. EPA's letter to us and to about 30 communities in our service area began, we have reason to believe there are ongoing violations of the Clean Water Act. Pursuant to our authority under Section 308, you will provide certain information. That got the attention not only of Alcosan, but all of our communities, the public, and our elected officials, and began the conversation. From that information, EPA began to develop its understanding of the scope and the level of the overflow problem in our service area. That information, that conversation that we began then, led to the negotiation process of the consent decree that we're operating under now. Part of the policy, the combined sewer overflow policy, requires EPA to place water improvement plans, wet weather plans, for major metropolitan areas like Pittsburgh under federally enforceable orders. So I want you to understand, this consent decree was not the result of some exceptional onerous activity by us in this region, because this problem, this overflow problem, affects many cities in the Northeast, many cities across our country. It's EPA and the government's way of managing such large projects as ours. We began negotiating in 2007, and it was a 7-year process to hammer out that agreement. Part of the time was spent educating EPA and having them accept the work that we had done up to that point. Part of that time was EPA shepherding the efforts of DEP and the Allegheny County Health Department in developing consent orders and administrative orders with our 83 municipalities. Those orders required our municipalities to begin a process much like ours of studying their sewers, correcting major flaws, and working with us to prepare this comprehensive regional wet weather plan. The resulting consent decree, of course, had to allege violations, which there were. It included civil penalties paid by us for past wrongs, stipulated penalties to ensure that we continued in the process required by the consent decree. It was formally entered, which is a legal term. It was handed to the court. The court made it a court order in January of 2008. It required us to develop and submit our wet weather plan, this comprehensive plan to control overflows, by January of 2013, and to build those facilities necessary to comply with the Clean Water Act and that consent decree by September 2026. Fundamental requirements contained in that consent decree are to eliminate sanitary sewer overflows, to control combined sewer overflows so that we reduce the quantity and the frequency of those overflows to an acceptable level. And acceptable is defined by the government, not by us. We had to coordinate our planning with our 83 municipalities so that the entire system worked in concert and accomplished the required objectives. We had to complete implementation of that plan, which means building whatever we're going to build and doing whatever we need to do to control the overflows by 2026. And our planning, our design, our construction had to be sufficient to anticipate the growth and the needs of our communities for an additional 20 years. So we have compliance guaranteed through 2046. It's a very tall order for any region, particularly ours. We fulfilled our obligations. We created a plan in mid-2012 and published that for public comment and review by our municipalities and by our ratepayers. After gathering that comment, we submitted that plan and everyone's comments in January of 2013. Because of the comments, and I have to tell you that public comment period created a large cry for green infrastructure. Because of those comments, we asked the agencies to delay evaluating our plan so we could further study opportunities for including green infrastructure, mostly opportunities for our municipalities to incorporate green infrastructure, because green infrastructure works best at the source of the water, which is within our municipal customers. Our plan complied with our federal requirements and our consent decree requirements. It eliminated sanitary sewer overflows. It controlled the combined sewer overflows. We accomplished that goal, but we had another obligation to determine whether that plan could be paid for. So we did a financial evaluation. The plan, as originally developed, would cost this region $3.6 billion. We determined through our financial evaluation that our region could afford no more than $2 billion. That's still an incredible sum of money, but we have to follow EPA's guidelines for what is affordable. Using their guidelines is what resulted in this $2 billion number. As I said before, because of the cost, because of the public comment and the desire for alternative technologies, we asked EPA, give us more time to study this. We're not asking for years, we're asking for 18 months just to try to comprehend some better ways to do this. Since we had this $2 billion determination, we proposed an option, a first phase in the implementation of our plan. As I said, it cost $2 billion. It included about $1.4 billion of work by Alcosan to expand the treatment plant, to build tunnels, build consolidation sewers. It also included an estimated $575 million that had to be spent by our municipalities to improve their system. Again, this is not what you would think of as an integrated system, because you have different owners of different pieces. So the municipalities have a significant proportion of this cost to bear individually within their own systems. The timing of all of the activities was not definite when we submitted the plan, because we and our municipalities had orders that provided requirements on slightly different schedules. So the $575 million was a planning level estimate from our communities. They had additional time after we submitted our plan to determine whether it was feasible for them to work with our plan, move their sewage flows to our facilities that we propose to build. You can't understand the impact of the public comment. It opened a door that we never expected to be opened. It opened the door to conversations not about when can you do it, how much can you afford to spend, but also to different ways to implement the program, different technologies to be used to create a better benefit from the program. This is unprecedented. You see it happening in other communities across the country, but by and large that's happening after they've spent significant dollars to build their facilities. This conversation is beginning before we've begun designing the facilities. So this is really unique, it's really unprecedented. And you know, the folks that have paid attention to this need to be proud of the effort that they made that created this opportunity for additional discussion. Our discussions included the potential of green technology. They included regionalization, included adaptive management, which is really key to this process. If you aren't familiar with that term, it's the ability to implement your program in segments, evaluate how well it works, change direction if you see a better technology, continue on your path if you see success. EPA liked our plan. If it was entirely up to them, we'd be implementing a $3.6 billion plan right now. But because we couldn't afford it, because we're proposing something less than the full plan, and because we had such an outcry for green technology and other alternative technologies, again, it opened the door to further conversation. It's important to note that EPA did not reject our plan, but they could not approve it either because it didn't go as far as they wanted it to. So they've suggested an alternative path. The question they posed to us at the beginning of this new negotiation was, we got to get something started. We can't let this go on for years and let you drag it out while you completely revamp your plan. So tell us, what can you build that is not reliant on flow reduction? What's absolutely critical, central to any planning? They allowed us to, well, they want us to continue down the path of regionalization because they feel that's a more efficient and easier to regulate organization of sewers within our region. And they wanted us to develop flow reduction targets for our communities. This is a little bit different than our initial charge when we were developing the plan, because we were asking our communities to essentially stabilize your systems, tell us what you're going to give us, we'll build to meet that. Now, in exchange for the time to study and to vary the course that we originally taken, EPA is looking to all of us to look at flow reduction strategies. The goals that we have to meet, obviously we have to improve water quality. It must be a truly regional plan. And we must reduce stormwater entering our system. We're lobbying hard for green technology because we understand this is a key component of any sustainable planning. Through our study work, through efforts of folks like Tim Prevost, we're looking at the potential for green projects throughout our service area. We're giving our communities information that they did not have as they did their own planning. We're working on incentives that will encourage our communities to go green or reduce flows in some other manner. And we're working with our municipalities to design policies that are supportive of green technology in any kind of redevelopment. From our view, our negotiations are positive right now. We're able to contain costs through this process to $2 billion. We're going to expand the plant and begin to develop critical storage tunnel sections. It's unavoidable. It's EPA's demand. It's the keystone to the entire flow management overflow issue. We continue to balance our environmental and fiscal responsibilities so that this region can afford it and can get the best benefit from it. We believe we're going to be able to maintain enough flexibility with this new consent decree, our new planning, to be able to take advantage of technologies as they arise and to really push ahead on some of the planning that turns out to be very successful. As I mentioned, we have the opportunity now to incorporate green infrastructure and source reduction. And this consent decree and our planning will support new stormwater management practices with land redevelopment. And with that, I'm going to turn you over to Gene.